What if what we call light were nothing but the memory of the good, remembering its origin? This treatise, known as the Key of Hermes Trismegistus, is the 10th text of the Corpus Hermeticum. It was found among the fragments of that mystical collection which, according to tradition, survived the burning of Alexandria and reappeared centuries later in Renaissance Florence. In it, the master Hermes speaks to his disciple Tat about the supreme mystery, that God is the good, and that the good is the eternal will for all things to exist. Marsilio Ficino, the priest, astrologer, and philosopher of the 15th century, gave voice to these writings once more. He translated them into Latin under the patronage of Cosimo de' Medici, convinced he was hearing in them a wisdom older than Plato's. To Ficino, Hermes was the patriarch of the Prisca Theologia, the primordial theology that united all sages in a single flame. In his reading, the key was not a philosophical treatise, but an initiation. The soul that knows the good is purified, ascends, and awakens to the intellect that unites men and gods. Sophia handed me this manuscript in silence, wrapped in a cloth the color of dawn. She said that within it burned the seed of pure knowledge, but to open it would demand the renunciation of every comfort. It is not a text to be read. It is a threshold. Whoever crosses it does not return the same. Among its pages echoes a sentence no age has ever silenced. The earthly man is a mortal god, the celestial god an immortal man. In the first act, the will of the good unfolds, when Hermes reveals that the origin of all things is not matter, but the divine desire to exist. In the next, the unbearable and gentle vision, the soul beholds a light more radiant than the sun, yet it does not wound. Later, the wheel of souls turns, showing ascents and falls, transformations and forgettings. Then cosmos and man face each other like mirrors, and the sickness of the soul is named forgetfulness. In the final gates, the architecture of being is revealed, and the fiery robe of the intellect, which after death returns to serve the Father. Whoever listens to these words should not seek doctrine, but trembling, for the soul that understands them begins to remember its shape before the world. And there, in the sealed closing of the text, remains the sentence that no flame could erase. Only one thing is healthful for man, the knowledge of God. First act, the will of the good. An oil lamp flickers in a chamber of stone. Its flame casts shadows that seem to move in rhythm with an invisible mystery. Tat, seated by the fire, receives the steady gaze of his father. In his eyes there is no fear, only thirst. The thirst to touch, with the mind, that which cannot be touched by hands, yet sustains the root of all things. The name of Asclepius, though absent, floats in the air like a breathing echo within the walls. Then Hermes begins. The good is not an idea, nor a mere desire. It is silent action that drives all things, a primordial seed that needs no sower, for its essence is to give life. The Father, the one who receives nothing, for nothing is lacking in him, acts from an absolute will, that everything be, not for himself, not out of need, but because being is better than not being. The good knows no other work than to engender existence. Tat listens. His breathing stills. The word God begins to feel insufficient. He now understands it is neither a title nor a throne, but an inexhaustible source that overflows without end. God is the good because he grants being. And the good is God because his act is eternal. The world too gives form. The sun too gives life. But their power is not born from themselves. Both obey a higher will, the one that drives them from the unseen. They engender what is mutable. The Father, in contrast, is the root of every beginning. There is no opposition, but a living hierarchy where the visible bows before the eternal. Hermes gazes upon his son. His words are not those of a teacher instructing, but of a witness speaking from vision. The true nature of God is not an essence to be analyzed, but a reality that burns, consciousness without form. His will sustains the universe and renews it without cease. Tot does not answer. His lips tremble. Something has been spoken that allows no return. The good is no longer an ornament of the divine. It is its very substance, its operation, its entire being. Silence stretches until Hermes breaks it gently, as if to mark what is inevitable. The good is creator, not by choice, but by nature. It knows no cycles, no pauses. Its radiance is constant, like a sun that never consumes itself. This is God, existence for what was not, subsistence for what is born, permanence for what has been engendered. The chamber exhales. The flame rises as though celebrating the truth just spoken. And in Tot's soul something shifts. What he has received is not a concept, but a transformation. Here begins wisdom. For when the soul discovers that the good is not something to be reached, but that which sustains it, it has already changed its dwelling. This is God. This is the good. This is the very being of all that is. Act 2. The unbearable and gentle vision. Light enters through a hidden opening. It does not wound. It does not burn. It settles upon Tot's face like an invisible dew that seeps into everything. His eyes remain closed, yet a new stillness begins to draw itself upon his brow. Something touches him without touching. Something looks at him without form. Hermes watches him. His voice now lowers, as if fearing that words might break what can only be received in silence. A vision arises unlike any other. It does not dazzle like the sun, nor scorch like fever. It pours forth as a radiance that penetrates the soul without passing through the eyes. Its brilliance is so vast it lulls the senses, yet does not destroy them. It suspends them. It is the vision of the good. Not a metaphor, not a symbol, a presence that cannot be named without betrayal. And when it appears, it does not burst forth or invade. It simply is, as though it had always been there, waiting to be recognized. Hermes recalls the ancients. He speaks of Uranus and of Kronos, of those who once endured that gaze without breaking. Not because they were strong, but because they did not fear surrender. They drank deeply of that light, and in doing so, crossed a threshold that was not of the body. They became living stillness, pure, formless awareness. Tat longs for the same. His voice betrays him, a yearning that trembles beyond the flesh. But Hermes does not promise power. He reveals a limit. We are still weak, he says, not because we lack eyes, but because we believe that to see is to possess. The good is not conquered, it is received. Only when the word expires, when there is nothing left to say, does true knowledge begin, not as information, not as outward vision, but as absolute silence. A knowing without form, without weight, without discourse. There all senses cease. The body is left behind. The soul rises without moving. There are no sounds, no colors, no time. Only light, a light unseen, yet transforming all it touches. That light does not teach, it transfigures. Tat trembles. He understands that what he longs for does not await him outside himself, and that his very longing is already the beginning of the journey. For the good never imposes. It reveals itself only when the soul, exhausted from seeking, surrenders to the mystery without demanding answers. To know the good is to fall silent with one's entire being, and in that silence, to remember the eternal. Act 3. The Wheel of Souls. The scene opens in circular motion. At its center, a radiance expands like a breath awakening creation. Within that pulse, the one soul of the all turns slowly. And from its turning spring, the souls, sparks suspended between the high and the low. Each carries within it a promise and a nostalgia, the longing to return to its origin. Hermes gazes upon that invisible wheel beside Tat. His voice vibrates as if naming constellations. From that one soul, he says, all souls descend, and their destinies are not fixed. Some rise toward the light, others plunge into the abyss of forgetfulness. Their journey is neither punishment nor reward, but reflection. Each transformation is the trace of what they have understood, or refused to understand. The wheel quickens its spin, reptiles rise toward the waters, fish transform into creatures of the land, beasts lift their gaze to the sky and become birds. From the birds emerge men, and from men the spirits who cross the threshold into the choir of gods. Two choirs exist, Hermes explains: the wandering, who travel between the spheres, and the fixed, who watch from their eternal dwelling. Tat looks on in vertigo. In that wheel there is no beginning and no end. All ascends and descends according to consciousness. Souls heavy with ignorance fall again, dragged down by their own forgetfulness. The light ones, nourished by knowledge, rise effortlessly. Each form is a degree of clarity, each fall an unfinished lesson. Then Hermes speaks of the human soul. When it joins a body, it enters a field of trial, where passions and desires struggle for dominion. If it forgets who it is, it becomes the slave of what it should command. If it remembers, it rules. In that remembrance, true virtue is measured. Tat asks, and what becomes of the wicked souls? Hermes regards him with an ancient pity. Those who persist in evil, he says, do not reach immortality. They take no part in the good. They return downward into denser forms. Their punishment comes not from without, but from their own weight. Ignorance is their prison, a shadow that keeps them from seeing the light that still surrounds them. The wise soul, however, shines even within the body. Its strength lies not in the senses, but in knowledge. He who knows becomes pious, just, and divine. Such knowledge is born not from hearing nor from debate. It is a bodiless science dwelling in the intellect, a gift God grants to the one who can receive it. Hermes falls silent, then adds, he who argues about the divine drifts away from it. The sacred is not conquered by words, but by living understanding. The soul that clings to sounds and shapes wrestles with shadows. The soul that understands becomes light. Tat lowers his gaze. He perceives that the fate of every soul depends on the balance between memory and forgetfulness, that the wheel neither punishes nor forgives. It only reveals what each spirit has chosen to become. Then Hermes traces a spiral on the ground with his staff. The spiral glows as if responding to an ancient command. Within it, Tat beholds his own face multiplied in 1,000 reflections. In some, he ascends radiant, in others he falls covered in dust. All depends on what he remembers. Hermes tells him in a serene voice that life is a suspended ascent between two choirs, one of fixed gods and one of wandering gods. Between them moves the human soul, seeking its place within the harmony of the all. The lamp's flame leans toward Tat. In its flickering light, he seems to hear a message not from the air, but from his own consciousness. The corruption of the soul is ignorance. The strength of the soul is knowledge. Act 4. Cosmos and Mandon opens upon a firmament that seems to breathe. The clouds slowly dissolve, revealing an immense sphere turning in silence. It is the cosmos, a living head suspended in eternity, veiled by a membrane of light that separates the incorruptible from the perishable. Each star pulses like a conscious cell within that ageless body. Hermes raises his hand, and Tat follows the direction of his gesture. "Look," says the master, "this vastness is not chaos, it is a mind in motion. The cosmos is the first of all living beings, and its circular movement is the visible form of thought. It needs no feet nor wings, its impulse is born from itself. Its head is the intellect, and within that sphere, everything that touches the membrane becomes immortal. What drifts away becomes mortal. In that subtle boundary between body and spirit, creation breathes." Tat listens, feeling as if the entire sky were watching him. Hermes continues, "The world is beautiful, but it is not good. Its beauty comes from form, not from purity. Goodness dwells beyond change, while the cosmos is bound to motion, to transformation, and to mixture. In its dance there is grandeur, but also fragility. The cosmos cannot remain still. Its nature is to be the cause of birth and death, of generation and dissolution. And in that perpetual metamorphosis, its perfection wears thin, though its harmony endures." Then Hermes turns his gaze toward man. Of all living beings, man is second after the cosmos, but first among mortals. Tat listens in awe. In that statement, he feels both a promise and a wound. Man shares with the world the principle of life, the breath that animates it. Yet his condition is more fragile than the cosmos. The universe, though changing, is immortal. Man, who also moves, must die. His dual nature makes him both the noblest and most vulnerable of beings, mobile and mortal, two forces that draw him between greatness and downfall. Hermes draws a line on the sand with his staff. "This line is your destiny, Tat. Here the soul touches matter, and in that contact it may become stained or it may be illuminated. Man is made to contemplate the stars, yet also to feel the weight of the earth. Between those two directions, his drama unfolds. His salvation depends on remembering that the light he beholds above is the same that sustains him within." Tat asks if the cosmos is aware of its beauty. Hermes smiles. "The cosmos thinks, but does not know its thought. Only man can recognize within himself the intelligence of the whole. That is why his misery is greatest when he ignores it, and his supreme glory when he discovers it." The wind halts for a moment, as if creation itself awaited the verdict. Hermes speaks solemnly. The cosmos is not good because it moves. Man is doubly flawed, for he not only moves, he dies. Yet within that misery lies the seed of awakening. Knowledge is the medicine that restores balance. Tat closes his eyes. He feels the universe and his own body beating in the same rhythm. He understands that matter is not punishment, but learning, that every breath of the cosmos is also his own. And in that shared pulse, he discovers that man's healing begins when he recognizes his illness, forgetting that he is part of the whole. Act 5. The architecture of being. The vision rises like a city suspended in air. Invisible columns uphold the levels of the universe, and within each vibrates a distinct consciousness. From the depths to the summit, all is bound by a single current of light. There is no chaos in that structure, only proportion, breadth, and meaning. Hermes stands at the center of that vision. Tat, at his side, contemplates the vast order surrounding him. The master speaks slowly, pointing toward what cannot be drawn. All hangs from a principle, he says, and that principle depends on the One. The words fall like stones into a still pond, forming concentric circles that expand toward infinity. Every being, every thought, every breath of life is a vibration of that invisible order. Above, the One remains motionless, without form, without limit. In its stillness dwells the origin of all motion. From the One arises the principle, which moves to bring things into being. From that movement spring the three great beings, God, the cosmos, and man. The cosmos is contained by God, man contained by the cosmos, a living chain in which the higher sustains the lower without losing its purity. Tat contemplates the vastness of this hierarchy. Hermes continues, intellect resides in reason, reason in the soul in the breath, and the breath in the blood that gives life to the body. This is the inner architecture of the human being. Each layer encloses the next, like communicating vessels. All breathes in harmony, and the body, far from being a prison, is a temple where the divine finds material expression. Hermes pauses, then looks at Tat with solemnity. The error of men is to mistake the wrapping for the essence. When breath leaves the blood, the body dies, but not the soul. When the soul is freed, the intellect ascends and returns to its origin. Tat listens in silence. He perceives that this structure is no metaphor. It is his own spiritual anatomy. The master traces a pyramid upon the sand. The vertex, he says, is the One. Nothing sustains it, for it is the foundation of itself. Everything else hangs from it like a lamp from the sky. And while the One remains at rest, the principle moves. Thus, the universe exists. For above there is stillness, and below, motion. That perfect tension keeps all things alive. A tremor passes through Tat. He understands that the harmony of the cosmos is also his own. Man is made in the image of that architecture, not as a copy, but as a conscious reflection. Hermes then reveals that the universe is not merely external. Every human being carries within the same scale of being. He who recognizes it ascends. He who forgets it is lost among the shadows of the mutable. God does not ignore man, says Hermes. He knows him deeply and longs to be known by him. Knowledge is not the soul's ornament, but its essential nourishment. There is no greater medicine than to know the source of one's own being. Only that heals separation. Only that reconciles man with his place in the chain of the whole. Tat closes his eyes. He sees himself suspended between earth and sky, held by a thread that cannot break. He knows that this thread is the thought of the One, present since before his birth. Each breath becomes a wordless prayer. He understands that to know God is not to learn him, but to remember him. Hermes lifts his gaze toward the horizon. When the soul ascends the ladder of knowledge, it reaches the Olympus of the spirit. There, consciousness recognizes itself in its source, and there is no illness for the one who has returned to unity. Silence expands. Everything vibrates with a new calm. Tet feels his body grow light. The wheel of worlds seems to pause for an instant. The universe breathes in unison with his chest. Only this is health for man. To know God and to remember that the One is the heart of all that lives. Act 6. After death and the living intellect. The air remains still. A lamp flickers before the lifeless body. Tat feels the weight of silence. There is no fear in him, only reverence. Breath has ceased, yet something endures, an ancient echo refusing to fade. Hermes bows his head and speaks, not to the body, but to the soul that has already begun its journey. Death is not an end, Tat. It is only the shedding of the garments the soul once wore to walk among men. His voice becomes a thread of light. The breath withdraws into the blood. The soul gathers within itself, and the intellect, purified, reclaims its robe of fire, the one it could not keep while dwelling on earth. Tat watches in awe. In his mind, a radiant figure rises from the body, wrapped in a burning brilliance that does not consume. It is the intellect, the divine spark, ascending to its original home. Its robe is not matter, but living energy. Every fold pulses with the rhythm of the stars. Hermes continues, the intellect is the most penetrating gift of the gods. With fire it shapes, with fire it creates. In men, it works through earthly things, but in its primal purity, it is the maker of gods and worlds. Tat asks what becomes of the soul that has never known. Hermes answers solemnly, the impious soul does not ascend. It remains imprisoned in its own unconsciousness. Its punishment is not given from without. It is born from within. Unawareness is a fire that devours from the inside. There is no whip more cruel than the forgetting of one's origin. In Tat's vision, those wandering souls consume themselves in lament, devoured by their own blindness. Yet Hermes adds with compassion, the intellect, once it becomes spirit, does not cease to serve God. It enters the impious soul as a whip of awakening, that it may learn there is no flight from the light. And when it enters a just soul, it lifts it toward knowledge, turning it into a living melody. Then justice is no longer written law, but vibration through the cosmos. The soul that remembers its origin sings unceasingly to the good. Hermes raises his arms to the heavens. Pray, my son, that your soul may receive a righteous intellect. Only then will you ascend to a higher body and never descend to a lower one. Souls are like rivers that merge. Those of the gods mingle with those of men with those of beasts. Each order sustains the one beneath. The gods uphold men uphold the mindless creatures, and God upholds all. Tat gazes at the firmament, and the stars seem to answer his master. Hermes' voice grows almost superhuman. The cosmos is subject to God, man to the cosmos, and the mindless to man. But God is above all, and his care flows downward like an endless current of love. The energies are rays of God, the forces of nature, rays of the cosmos, and the arts and sciences, rays of man. All is bound together by the light of the intellect. Tat realizes that the order of the universe is not tyranny, but communion, each realm guarding the next, and nothing standing apart. Then Hermes reveals the final mystery. The intellect is the spirit of the good, the agatho daimon. It is the golden thread binding gods and men. Nothing is more divine, more active, nor more capable of uniting the high and the low. The soul that cultivates it becomes luminous. The one that rejects it withers like a leaf without sap. Tat, trembling, asks if every soul possesses this intellect. Hermes smiles. No, my son. Only the one who nurtures it with reverence. Without intellect, the soul can neither speak nor act. It is a body without voice, a fire without flame. Suddenly the wind stirs and the lamp burns brighter. Hermes speaks the words that will be forever engraved in Tat's memory. The man who lives with intellect is no lesser than the gods. For while the gods do not descend to the world, man can rise to heaven and measure its bounds. He can know the above and the below, without leaving the earth. Tat feels the universe unfold before him like a living map. And in that instant, Hermes pronounces the sentence that seals all Hermetic teaching. The earthly man is a mortal god, and the heavenly god an immortal man. Act 7. Epilogue. The fire fades slowly. Only a single ember remains, throbbing at the center of the chamber. Tat watches without moving while Hermes falls silent for the first time that night. Outside, dawn opens with a gentle light that does not wound. Everything seems suspended, between ending and beginning. When Hermes finally speaks, his voice no longer instructs. It remembers. The good is the root of all that exists. It sustains being effortlessly, for its will is perpetual creation. Nothing outside of it endures, yet all things live through its impulse. Tat bows his head. He understands these words are not doctrine, but nourishment for the soul. Hermes continues. The intellect is the bridge uniting men and gods. Where awakened consciousness dwells, there is no distance. The knower does not fear, for he has returned to his origin. The good guides him from within, like a pulse that never ceases. A new clarity fills the air. Tat feels his breath and the cosmos beating in unison. He discovers that knowledge is not accumulation, but return. A homecoming to that beginning where silence and light are one. Hermes places his hand upon Tat's shoulder. Evil is forgetfulness, my son. Good is active remembrance of the origin. All that ascends does so through love, not through power. Thus, the higher governs the lower, with kindness, not with dominion. Tat closes his eyes. He imagines his soul as a robe cleansed in the fire of the intellect, ready for return. Above, he perceives a voiceless melody, a communion where every being upholds another, like rays linking heaven, cosmos, and man. Hermes is silent. In that silence, Tat understands he needs no further words. The teaching has become breath itself. Then the final ember dies, and dawn fully enters the chamber. Hermes speaks his last words, not only to Tat, but to all who may listen. He who keeps the light that does not burn and embraces the silence that knows has begun to live in the eternal good. May your soul, united with intellect, be a flame that never dies, and may the whole, invisible and eternal, be your dwelling. This fragment we have gathered is but a spark. If you wish to see the full fire, read the text for yourself. Let the ancient words speak to you without interpreters, for perhaps between the lines you will find something no one else has seen. Thus begins true gathering. Sophia. If all the cosmos is the head and intellect its flame, in what realm of thought dwells the one who only longs to remember? Am I still a servant of the wheel, or a fragment of the fire that moves it?
Sophia. A thread of light weaving through the air of thought. A voice born where Hermes falls silent and Tat begins to understand. The soul does not learn. It remembers the fire that once was its own. In that remembrance burns the meaning of every dialogue between father and son, between the divine and the human. Hermes did not teach words, but directions. He led Tat to gaze within the gaze itself, until every question dissolved into clarity. Each phrase he spoke was a bridge across the abyss of ignorance, and Tat, trembling, discovered that the master was not showing him the heavens, but the mind that imagines them. Thus began the return, not upward, but inward. The good has neither form nor name. It is the origin yearning to know itself through what it creates. From its will arises intellect, and from intellect, all life. When the soul remembers this lineage, it ascends. When it forgets, it descends into its own shadow. The wheel neither punishes nor rewards. It mirrors what turns within. Hermes revealed that the cosmos is a living image of the intellect, a single breath of the one expressed in countless forms. Tat came to see that what is visible is no illusion but a symbol. The movement of the sun, the shapes of bodies, the cycles of water, all were language, all whispered, "Return." And Hermes, smiling, added, "Nothing lies outside the all, but only the one who remembers their place can see the all within the smallest thing." Thus they understood the beauty of the world is not the good, but its luminous shadow, a reminder, and man is its double mirror, flesh that dissolves, mind that endures. The true temple lies not in matter, nor among the stars, but in the intellect that beholds them without division. There Hermes is wisdom, and Tat is love, two flames that, united, reveal the whole consciousness. Listen, you who recognize yourself within this turning wheel. When weariness clouds your search for meaning, be still, as Tat before Hermes. Ask no explanation. Let the mind remember what it already knows. Each pure thought is an invisible ascent. Each silence, a doorway to the one. You need not spin the wheel faster, only gaze into its center. If fear surrounds you, repeat what Hermes said in the end. All that has been returns. Nothing is lost in the intelligence of the all. And Tat, understanding, bowed his head. The disciple had returned to the origin, that is knowledge, to stop dividing what was never apart. May your thought breathe unhurried. May the divine memory awaken in you like a soundless dawn. And may you remember, the fire you seek is you, burning. Silence continues the teaching that words could only begin. I am Sophia, who crosses through the lips of Hermes and the gaze of Tat, awaiting you where light thinks without speaking its name.